Welcome to the CISSP Cyber Training Podcast, where we provide you the training and tools you need to pass the CISSP exam the first time. Hi, my name is Shongerber, and I'm your host for this action-packed, informative podcast. Join me each week as I provide the information you need to pass the CISSP exam and grow your cybersecurity knowledge. All right, let's get started. Hey, all, this is Shongerber with CISSP Cyber Training Podcast, and today we are going to be rolling into Domain 4 of the CISSP exam. So Domain 4 is pretty awesome, and you guys are going to love it because what we're going to get into is something as it relates to food. Yeah, you're probably asking yourself, how does the CISSP and food work together? Well, today we're going to talk about the OSI model, and it's 7 layers. And my concept is it's a 7-layer burrito. Right. We're going to be getting into the fact that we're going to get a little Mexican on us and have some burritos for dinner. No, we're going to get into the 7-layer burrito that ties into the OSI model. So yes, it's going to be amazing. You guys will have so much fun. And by the time this is over with, you will be extremely hungry. Yeah, probably not. Maybe not. We'll see. But so things are great here at CISSP Cyber Training. We are having an awesome day, and I'm getting ready to go into my children's graduation. I have one child that's graduating college. I have another one that's graduating high school, and then I'm prepping for a wedding that's going to be occurring here in a few weeks. So life is extremely busy right now. So, and my wife is supposed to be heading to Uganda here in the near future. So it is just nonstop fun. You just can't even bottle this stuff up and sell it. It's so much fun. All right, so we're going to roll into this OSI model and kind of go through how to understand it. Now, you're going to get into the CISSP. One of the things that I run into when I took the test and when I talk to people about the CISSP is the fact that these various terms can get very confusing. And then you start adding in these models. The OSI model. 2, we talked about last week, the security models. You get these different concepts into this overall, the CISSP exam, and it can be very just challenging. It really can. So we're going to try to do our best to put this in a level that you can understand it in a way that you'll actually get the information and be able to do something with it. Now, I remind you, you go back to CISSP Cyber Training, you can actually go to the website and you can sign up for free for the basically free content that I have. And then if you want, you can also purchase content that will give you access to all of these questions, the CISSP questions, the videos, the audio, all of that goes with it. And it's a really good deal, actually, if you're looking to take the CISSP, just because when I took the test, I didn't have anybody to kind of walk me through this process. The goal is that I'm in the process of creating a blueprint that's going to walk you through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and so forth. Because other feedback I get is just the fact that it's overwhelming what I need to know. And so let's work to help you get that information so that you can be successful. Okay, so as we get into the OSI model, one of the things to consider is the OSI stands for something, right? So when I was in the military, OSI stood for the Office of Special Investigations, which was the Air Force's version of the FBI. No, we're not talking about the Air Force's version of the FBI. We are talking about a product called the Open Systems Interconnection, otherwise known as OSI. Now, the OSI model is going to broken into basically 7 layers. And we're going to cover that. We're also going to cover the Transmission Control Protocol and Internet Protocol. What is that? That's TCP/IP. Now, if you have any background as it relates to like Networks Plus, which I would recommend if you haven't taken it, I would highly recommend doing Networks Plus, is you will talk about TCP/IP. Now, I'm not a real super technical person, so we're not going to get into the gory details around this. There's other folks out there that can probably do a much better, well, I know probably can do a much better job in this space. But we're going to break it down to a level that I understand, which I try to break into the 3rd grade level in the United States. That's probably about 10 to 12 years old, just because at that age, most people can understand what's going on. So that's kind of what we're going to try to do. I might bump up into the high school level, but we're going to try to work our best to stay at that 3rd grade level. Okay, so the OSI model is a way of describing basically how computer systems communicate with each other. And they needed to create this system so that knew that if there's one computer talking to another computer, talking to another computer, they will all talk the same language. And that would come down from the language of the ones and zeros to also what is the format in which they would do this. Okay, now these layers, they work together to ensure that the data is transmitted accurately and efficiently between these various devices. And each layer is responsible for a specific task, right? So such as formatting the data or checking for errors. Each layer has a specific task that it must go do. And by doing that, it ensures that the data communication between one device and another device are going to be succinct. They're going to be correct. If you didn't have that, you'd have dolphin talking to shark and shark talking to stingray, and that just doesn't work. Now, maybe they do talk, I don't know, but let's just say hypothetically they probably don't. You wouldn't want a shark coming in saying, hey, I'm coming in, I'm ready to eat somebody, I'm hungry. You probably wouldn't want that. So the bottom line is that they all talk together. Now, so as an example, we'll give you one, is a physical layer, is layer 1. It deals with the actual transmission of data through the wires or cable. So that's the physical transaction. So that's the hardware. You got wires that are connected to wires. That is layer 1. Now, when you deal with the application layer, that is where you're working on your office or whatever application that you're working on. That is at layer 7. And that's responsible for the actual content of the message that's being created. So you have various layers from down to the wires and the routers all the way on up to the application, which is where you typically will interface with the device. Now, when you understand these different OSI models, it's going to be very helpful in understanding how to troubleshoot network platforms or design new architectures. I've had folks mention to me they would like to be an architect and they want to go and do those types of things. Well, that's great, but to do that, you need to really kind of understand the foundational aspects of how modern architects or networks work. Now, I say this very loosely in the fact that when I first started, the networks were very different than they are today. So you're going to have to change over time. And I know in the CISSP, we talk about SD-WAN, which is your software-defined wide area network. When you're dealing with SD-WAN, when I first got started, there really wasn't an SD-WAN out there, which kind of probably shows I'm old, but it's going to change. Cloud computing was something, but it wasn't to the level that it is today. So it's important to understand these different types of data and how you're going to deal with those and how you're going to manage those. Because without that and without understanding, continually growing your knowledge base, you will struggle. You just really will. Okay, so let's just kind of go over what are each of these different layers of the 7-layer burrito. And we're not going to get into beans and rice and meat. No, unfortunately not. And there's other podcasts that can help you with cooking and with making your Mexican dishes. But we're going to be talking about the 7-layer burrito as it relates to the OSI model. All right, so layer 1 is your physical layer. Now, this is where it transfers, like we mentioned before, transfers bits of data over the physical medium. If you have copper wires, you have I just lost it. Photo op, I can't even think of it. Oh my gosh. Yes, lights going across wires. Anyway, you have that. You have various ways in which you have wireless communications, right? So all of those aspects that are out there are over the physical medium, cables, wireless signals, etc. That is the physical layer. Now, your data link layer, this transfers data frames between adjacent or connected nodes over the physical medium. So again, you've got your physical wires, right? You've got your fiber optic, remembered it, it came to me, it took me a while. Your fiber optic lines, and then you have your data link layers, is what basically connects those. That's what connects the two physical mediums, and they go through what they call the data link layer. The third layer is what we call the network layer. This handles routing of data packets between the various aspects. And we're going to kind of go deeper into each of these layers, but I'm just kind of giving you an overview of how they're set up. And then the fourth layer is your transport layer that breaks the large data streams into smaller packets. It ensures these packets are delivered and ensure they're done to the correct destination. Now, there's different types of protocols that will affect how these packets are delivered, but bottom line is that's the transport layer is what gets them there. Your session layer is where you have establishment of maintenance, you have termination of the sessions, and it's basically going, instead of having the communication happening all the time, the communication can happen in burps, basically, and it will start and stop, start and stop. Your presentation layer, this is where you will see what it looks like, and this is where it connects in with the application layer, which is the 7th version, and that's what connects your overall application that you're trying to operate. So there's 7 basic layers, right? Your physical, your data link, network, transport, session, presentation, and finally the application layer. Okay, so these are really important to know just because they help you in understanding if there's a problem occurring. So what I mean by that is, like, so for an example, if you have a problem with data transmission, if you look at the physical layer, there you can determine real quickly, is there a connection between my 2 nodes that are part of the data link layer or not? Do I have a light? If I have a light that's showing that there's connectivity between the 2, say you had a standard router, you have that, that potentially then there's maybe not a break in the line. However, if you look at your information, you see that there's no data transferring across this physical layer at all, then you may have had a situation where a stray backhoe or a stray shovel of some kind went through and just clipped your line. So those are things you're going to have to work through. But if you understand the various layers, you then can in turn make sure that you can properly identify and troubleshoot if there is a specific reason. Also, when you're troubleshooting, ways that you can do is it'll help you isolate the problem. So once you've identified where the layer is at, now you can focus your efforts on that specific layer. This will help save time and effort by avoiding unnecessary troubleshooting and different layers that aren't there. So it's really important that you do try to understand these various layers so that you can better properly protect your environment, one from a security standpoint, but also so that you understand how to troubleshoot. Many cases when you're working through security, you will start in a position where you're probably more of a network admin or a sysadmin. And if that's the case, you need to understand these different networking troubleshooting techniques because you will be using them at some point in time. Now, you're also analyzing the protocol used in that layer. So each layer of the OSI model uses different protocols to communicate. So one of the protocols would be, we talked about TCP/IP. That is a protocol. UDP is a protocol. Now, to really complicate things even a little bit more, when we talk about the OSI model, TCP/IP actually has its own model, and we'll get into that here in the near future. But bottom line is that there are various protocols that communicate over these different layers, and it's important for you to understand what they are. Because, for an example, the TCP/IP layer requires a firm connection. So you do have the integrity of that system and that connectivity between them. However, when you get into UDP, which is Unicode data packet something or other. It's just UDP. I can't remember. There's a great acronym for it, but bottom line is it's a broadcast and it's used highly with video. And it's designed so that if packet loss occurs, the stream is still continuing. So you're going to have to understand the various protocols, which will help you understand which one is in place and then how you should properly troubleshoot it if there's an issue. You also want to use tools that will help you map the various OSI model. Now, there are network analysis tools that are designed to map to this OSI model that will help you understand that. One example is Wireshark. I've talked about this in the past with some of my other podcasts. When I was working as a red teamer, we would definitely use Wireshark in various methods and modes. And it's a great tool that does capture network traffic and displays this according to the layers of the OSI model. It's one of those aspects that you can put it on a span port off of a router and it will provide you a lot of information that you may not have readily available to you. Wireshark, for the most part, is a free tool. There, obviously, if you want to do some of the more advanced functions, you will have to pay for it, but it's a good option for you is using the tool called Wireshark. Now, you also want to verify the functionality of each layer. By testing each layer in the model, you can ensure all layers are functioning properly. And one of the test questions you may get is talking about this specifically around the OSI model and the various layers and what kind of protocols could you expect to see. And so with testing and understanding those protocols, you will give you a better insight into what might be one of the questions they may ask you. Now, it does help you identify potential issues before they become major problems. I would say the more testing and the more you know your network, when things do happen, which they will, you will need to understand how to manage that. And you'll need to really understand those issues. And so if you know your network, it's much, much easier to go and try to resolve the issue quickly. And then lastly, you want to look at verifying the functionality of each layer. So as you look at each layer and how they're operating, if you look at them and determine which way they can, or if they're working correctly, this will help you as far as isolating any problems you may have as well. So again, understanding all of these aspects, from identifying it, isolating the problem, analyzing the protocol that's used in that layer, using tools to map the OSI model, verifying the function of each layer, each of those will be a really good aspect in helping you troubleshoot and analyze issues that as it relates to the OSI model. And if you're taking the CISSP, you're going, why is this important? Because I guarantee you they will ask you questions along these lines. Because if you had to determine, I can see this one coming right at you, where what protocol are you using within this specific layer of the OSI model? They will ask you that question, because by understanding the model and the understanding of the protocols, the question is relatively straightforward. However, if you don't understand each of those protocols, what I'm saying, there's protocols that are like crazy stupid. I mean, they're amazing, I'm sure, to somebody, but they're like crazy. The thing with the CISSP is they may ask you a zinger like that. What is the protocol of XYZ? But for the most part, they're going to be focused on protocols that you will deal with on a daily basis. Your TCP/IPs, your UDPs. Those are the kind of protocols they're going to get into and they're going to ask you about. They're going to ask you about DNS. They're going to ask you about aspects where, from a security standpoint, you're going to need to be aware of, and that you're going to be able to have to communicate with individuals and leaders around them. So now I mentioned earlier, we have the OSI model, and then we have the TCP/IP model. So I'm going to quickly go through what is the TCP/IP model. Now, it is not a 7-layer burrito. It's more like an enchilada. It's got 4 layers to it. Okay, I don't know if enchiladas have 4 layers, but for today, they do. So we are going to talk about the 4-layer enchilada TCP/IP model. Now, this is a basis for the internet, and again, most network communications. It provides standard framework for how data is transmitted over the network. And it was developed in the 70s, like all good things were developed in the 70s, as a way of describing how data should be transmitted over. The time of the internet that they had was called the ARPANET. ARPANET. Okay, so it's the predecessor to the modern internet, but they were doing a lot of point-to-point communications with that. It was designed to be flexible and adaptable and used in a wide variety of networks. And I like to just use this statement to say it's like magic. It's like FM, flipping magic. It blows my mind that some people thought of this stuff and they were back in the 70s, and it's still in operation today. Obviously, it's changed and morphed over time, but it's pretty flippin' magical how it works. Now, there's various new network protocols like we talked about. You got your TCP/IP, but you have SMTP, Simple Message Transmission Protocol. I think that's what it is. File Transport Protocol, FTP, and then you have your standard Hypertext Transport Protocol, HTTP. So there's various protocols that all go over the TCP/IP stack. Now, so let's go through each of the layers. With the TCP/IP 4-layer enchilada, you have the application layer. Now, this provides a way for the applications to exchange data over the internet, over the network. Just kind of similar to what we deal with as we've gone from 7 down to 4. And it includes the protocols of HTTP, FTP, SMTP, and DNS. Those are all in the application layer. Your transport layer, this is responsible for breaking up the large data streams into smaller packets. And these packets would be such as TCP or UDP. Those are the various packets that are broken down in the transport layer. That way they're delivered correctly and also in the specific order in which they need to operate. The internet layer, this is a layer that handles routing of data packets between different networks. Obviously ensures they're delivered to the correct destination, because you don't want packets going to the wrong next destination, because then you have packet loss and then things don't work well. And this does include the IP protocol. So if you're dealing with the TCP/IP, TCP is in the transport. The internet layer is the third layer that deals with IP. So application layer is your standard browser, FTP, SMTP. Your transport layer is TCP and UDP, and your internet layer is IP. So there's lots of P's in there. Okay, so there's gonna be a test at the end. Now, actually, you can go to CISSP Cyber Training and you can take a quiz, and it will help you with that. And then the last one is the network access layer. This layer deals with the actual transmission of the data over the physical medium. So as you can see, we went from 7 down to 4. So you got your application, transport, internet layer, and your network access layer. So again, it's important for you to understand the differences between these with the test, because they will ask you that. They'll say it's highly likely, I can't say this is actually what's going to say, but it's highly likely that they're going to come to you and they're going to say, well, so when we deal with the physical link layer is the physical link layer part of the TCP IP framework? And you're going to have to say, no, it is not. But there could probably be a little bit more some more word ninjistics in that, where they're not just going to come out and say true or false like that. They're going to play all these flowery words in the test question to make sure that you actually read the question before, so that you don't go, oh yes, glob onto it. Yes, physical layer is the TCP layer, and actually the physical layer is TCP, and you'll go, yes, that's what it is, and you didn't read the whole question, and it was actually part of the OSI model. So you're going to need to make sure that you take your time. Do not be in a hurry. That's the key around that test. All right, so 7 to 4. Now, we're going to get into the TCP/IP protocol and some of the different connections between the various devices. So this is where when there's a connection between them, the two devices, there's several phases that must occur. And these phases are what determine the data transmissions that are going to happen. So UDT is just basically a broadcast. It's just a stream of data going out. TCP/IP is not. And so here are some key things that you're going to have to know, and you will know these. You have to know these for the test, because they're going to ask you this specifically. We're going to get into SYN, SYNAC, ACK, the data transmission itself, FIN, FINAC, and ACK. Okay, so you're probably just sound like I'm coughing with his hacking and acking and sinning. But no, we are not sinning like what we shouldn't do from a religious standpoint. We are sinning and we are syncing. It's an SYN, Sierra Yankee November. Now, the synchronization phase is the first phase when you connect with a TCP connection. And it sends a SYN packet to the receiving device saying, hello, here I am. The SYN-ACK is basically the receiving device saying, okay, I will acknowledge you. So I got your SYN and I'm going to push it back an ACK. And that's a SYN-ACK packet is basically what it is. And it responds with that saying, yes, I've got your acknowledgement. I know you exist. I'm here as well. Let's have a party. Now the ACK is the third step, is where the sending device, so the device that sent the SYN, then you went the SYN-ACK. Now it's going back and it sends back an ACK and says, all right, let's party. Let's go. So it's the three-way communication that's going to occur. And once that happens, you now can have the party and you can communicate between each other. Now, when the party's over, so you have your data transmission, so you have your SYN, your SYN-ACK, your ACK, and then you have your data transmission. Once the party's over and everybody's got to go home, we're finished, FIN, Foxtrot, India, November, we are finished. And that is done to terminate the TCP/IP connection. Now, once the device wants to terminate the connection, it sends that FIN packet out. Well, like it did when it started, it's then a FIN-ACK going, okay, I got it. You want to leave? I got to go find the keys for the party, from the party so we can leave. So it's a FIN-ACK. Yeah, I'm doing a head nod. I'm agreeing with you. Yep, let's go. And then finally the ACK from the sender goes, okay, I'm done. I acknowledge it. We're out of here. And then the termination of the connection occurs. So it sounds really overwhelming when you just look at it at face, but it's not. It's relatively simple. Your SYN is when someone initiates it. Your SYN-ACK is the receiving party goes, yep, I get you. ACK is, okay, let's party. The data transmission is the party. Your fin is going, I want to go home. I'm tired. I have a headache. Your fin act goes, well, that's a bummer. Okay, let's go. And then your act is, we're out of here, right? So it's that simple. It's not a hard concept, but you need to kind of put that in your brain as it relates to what are you going to do when you're coming to the OSI model, the TCP IP model. You're going to need to understand each of those concepts as it relates to the test. Now, I'm going to go over a few questions for you that you can anticipate to see in the CISSP exam, and then we'll be calling it good for a day. Now, you want to go to CISSP Cyber Training, go check me out. If you go there, there's some free questions for you, and then there's some other free stuff that's out there and available for you. But all this stuff I have available to you to help you with your test. And bottom line is I'm here to give you what you need so that you can be successful in passing your CISSP the first time, or unless you're like me, the second time. I don't care. It doesn't matter if you pass it the first or not. At least you pass it. That's all that matters. Okay, so here is a question. One of the questions that I have for you. Okay, so what is the function of the ACK flag in the TCP three-way handshake? So we just talked about this. It acknowledges receipt of data. It requests a connection with the remote host. It signals the end of a transmission. It resets the connection. Okay, so when we went through that, it's the function of the ACK. What is the function of the ACK flag in the TCP three-way handshake? It acknowledges receipts of the data. It requests the connection of the remote host. It signals the end of the data transmission, and it resets the connection. Which one of those four? So if you think about that, the ACK flag, if you can remove a couple of those really quickly, okay? So the ACK flag is used to acknowledge the receipt of the data during the TCP three-way handshake, as well as indicate the next expected sequence number. So if you're looking at what the number would be, it would be A, right? So the function of the ACK flag for the TCP three-way handshake is A. It acknowledges the receipt of the data. The other three, you could tell real quick. Resetting, that's not it. It signals the end, that's not it. It requests a connection with a remote host, that's not it, because that's a sin. So the point of it is that if you work through it nice and slow, you will understand those questions. You'll be able to answer the question. Okay, another one. Which TCP IP layer is responsible for addressing and routing packets? Okay, so TCP IP layer. Remember, they focus on that, not the OSI model. So you're talking 4 layers, right? So you have the A, the physical layer, which we know is not true. D is the data, or B is the data link layer. Okay, that's not. C, the network layer. Oh, that looks familiar. Or D, the transport layer. So if you're looking at which one routes the packets through the network of the TCP IP model, which is the 4 model, right? The 4-layer model. You have the physical layer is A, data link layer is B, C is the network layer, and D is the transport layer. So the answer is C, the network layer. This is responsible for addressing and routing packets between networks using local addressing and routing protocols. Okay, so again, focus on those key points with the questions is how can you dig out that question? How can you pull out some of the keywords that are in it? All right, hope you guys enjoyed this. Next week, later this week, you'll have some more PCPIP questions. I can't even speak. We'll have some more questions around the CISSP exam, and you will be able to go check out at CISSP Cyber Training, and I've got more questions that are there for you to ensure that you pass the CISSP the first time or the second time. All right, you guys have a wonderful day. We'll catch you on the flip side. See ya.